Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture. I'm your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my sponsors, Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And right now, you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed so many successful Kickstarter campaigns. A bunch of them you have even heard about on this very show. And they currently offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And Mixum can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to mixum.com. And right now, listeners of my show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a current order to get a 5% discount on their first order. So that is mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to receive a 5% discount on your first order. And without further ado, I have with me comic creator Sam Vera from Catch the Craze. So welcome to the show.
What's up? Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, no, I'm excited because you have a bunch of stuff going on, and I think this is your I think fourth or fifth Kickstarter. I want to say with "There's an Alien in My Toilet." It might even be your sixth. I'm not exactly sure.
This is the first with this nailing in my toilet, but actually my seventh Kickstarter because I had two other properties before this.
I was off by one. I was off by one. We can't all be perfect. You know, we can try. We can
We can
try.
try.
I promise.
There you
But what is the basic story of "There's an Alien in My Toilet"? Because I know there's a lot of history surrounding it, and it is a little bit different than your other properties.
Well, this is an old age sci-fi comedy about this egocentric, thinks he knows it all alien from the planet Uranus, and he's tasked with a secret mission to Earth to determine if we're a threat to his homeworld. And he's the only one capable of handling this mission. At least that's what he's led to believe, right? Because his father's the emperor of Uranus, and his guardian is happens to be the general who of the army of Uranus, and General Goatee. He really just is trying to get Duty out of his hair for a little bit, so he sends him on a fool's errand to Earth. He's like, "Oh, no harm will come from this," and so Duty, young, having to live up to his father's expectation, he wants to prove that he's worthy. So that's why he overcompensates with his bravado. So he heads to Earth, and in his haste, he realizes, oh, I forgot to refuel, and he crash lands. Duty will never admit his defeat, so he chalked it up as part of his plan to infiltrate the defenses. And now he has to survive Earth's simple creatures, from wolves to woodpeckers to a turtle to eventually getting into a house where there's a father and son, and there's a Chihuahua named Herman who thinks Duty's a talking jalapeno, and that's where the adventure begins.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in this, and it's obviously a very, very intense comic, for
Yes.
lack of a better word, and it's completely serious, based on a true story, right?
Yes. I met Duty when I was driving through the Lincoln Tunnel. It was from that point on, it was on.
And so obviously we're going to dive into the story, but where did this idea even come from? Because it is more towards kids. It's an all age comic. Anybody can read it. And it's kind of just all age humor where you can find it funny when you're 30 and you can find it funny when a 5-year-old's reading it, from my understanding. And so
Yes.
where did this idea really come from? Because it is kind of nice to see something that is wholesome to some degree.
Yeah, so basically, the influence was from an editor from a newspaper who approached us and said, "Hey, if you had a sci-fi comedy comic strip, we'd be willing to publish it in our paper." And so, at that time, we didn't have one, and I was just driving through the Lincoln Tunnel, and then bam, he showed up in my head. He says, "Hi, I'm Duty from Uranus," and I ran to IHOP. I met my buddies. I flipped over the table napkins. I started drawing, sketching the character, and that's how Duty came to life. But if you deep dive further, back, I was always a big fan of Marvin the Martian, Alf. I watched a series called Too Close for Comfort, where there's a father who illustrated Cosmic Cow. And so for me, I look back, all of those little, um, I guess they were like breadcrumbs led to the eventual birth of Duty.
Yeah, and let's even dive a little into that because obviously it started off where somebody asked you to create a comic.
Right.
And, I speak to a lot of indie comic creators, you do as well. And usually it's not that somebody's asking or a newspaper is approaching you. And that's kind of a different way on how to develop a comic because you have a client in mind
Right.
before you have an idea. And so what was that like? And then even just progressing it from there, because I don't know if it got into that newspaper or it just sort of spun out
I
into
chose not to give. I chose not to give it to them. I chose to publish it myself. So that's what was the when I tried my hand at the comic strip. And, we were doing the comic strip. We actually introduced the comic strip at the Mocha in New York, and I was like, you know what, this story is too good for a comic strip. I'm going to make it a comic book, a full story. And so I decided I wasn't even going to go and present it. I was just going to go and focus on the book, and that's when I started developing the series.
Yeah, and so this is something that I think a lot of people don't actually talk about is that you get approached by a client, but then you realize that you have something that is special and
Yes.
you have what is known as a winner.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had it with certain things as well. And because I used to do a bunch of anime panels and other things, and I'm like, man, I don't want to give this away for free,
Right.
or I'm writing an article for somebody, and I'm like, man, this is a really good concept. Let me find a different thing to give them.
Right.
And so, what was that like? Because people talk all the time saying, I want to write for Marvel on the indie, or I want to go to DC, or I want to work for Dark Horse. But once you go do that, your idea is not yours anymore. Or even if
Right.
you own it, the company that you're working for has influence over it.
Right. I mean, I think for me, I've never my aspirations was never really to work for the. I always wanted to go visit their studios and go look at what the bullpen looked like and spend a day just interviewing everybody and watching the process. That was what I always wanted to do. But I've always wanted to create my own work, because you know the creator and the project, um, they're linked up. You don't, you're the only one who knows it better than you, like, it like your right hand, right? And so I never wanted somebody else to tell me how to tell my story. Because what's different with There's Nailing in My Toilet and with Duty is from any other project I worked on, is this is scriptless. So every other comic I've done, I wrote the script, I wrote the timelines, the bios, the character histories, everything. And even if I was drawing it, I wrote the script with the dialogue, panel descriptions, camera angles, everything.
Yeah.
With Duty, I only draw when he starts communicating with me. And so I start drawing it, and then as I'm drawing the panels, the dialogue just starts flowing, and I start writing it in pencil on the page, and then it gets transferred on to the computer. So there was never a script for Duty. It was always just him communicating to me what to say, what happens, and so that's why for me it's like I couldn't. You can't articulate that process to somebody when people are so regimented and they're technical and I need a script, I need this, I need a storyboards, I said, well, that's not how this works. It's like Jay-Z going to work on an album. He goes into a studio, he doesn't have anything pre-written, he listens to the music and he starts freestyling. People don't understand that formula. Same process with Duty, it's almost like freestyled.
Because it's something that I've read a few comics that have done that, and the creator has been very open about it. But that is not traditionally how something is done.
Right.
And it's obviously I have a script when I'm building out a podcast, but I also go off of my script. But it's not pure freestyle. It's very rare that I do an interview without any notes in front of me.
Right.
And so, what is that like though? Because that's very creative, and also it allows for almost a more pure product per se.
Yeah, it's very refreshing because it's organic. It's like life is happening throughout the as with every pencil stroke, there's life that's happening, and there's a communication. It's almost like a zen space that you're in, because now you're just like one with your artistic flow, and everything just feels natural. So at the end of it, I'm always happy with the outcome, because I always say, when people say, where do you get your ideas from, I say it's previous poets and artists that moved on, had unfinished business, and they just channeled me and said, "Here, I need you to finish this project for me." And that's how it happens. And that's with Duty. I feel that's what it is. It's just like I'm being channeled. I'm the funnel. I'm creating his world, and he's the director.
Yeah, no, it's a very very fun book to read, and I've only read the first 9 pages. But obviously, there's a lot of stuff that's sort of behind the scenes too that I kind of want to touch upon a little bit, where I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a 5-issue distribution deal previously, and that you've had a lot of stuff. And I'm not too sure if you're remastering the issue or if you're bringing the issue back or what's going on with that. But what is that like to have previous content, or even to be able to say, hey, we're just going to reissue it under something? And also, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as a creator, your creative creation skills, for lack of a better word, increases over time.
Yes. So, yes, There's Nail in My Toilet was a graphic novel. It was grayscaled, distributed nationally. It was in Borders, Barnes and Nobles, the bookstores, Walmart, .com had it. And that was exciting. What I'm doing now, it is remastered. So basically, the reintroducing this issue, single issues first, recolored by a young lady named Barbara Saroji from Brazil, and relettered by George Medina, who is my co-host on Catch the Craze podcast, who also has a book coming out on Wonder Duck in May on Kickstarter. And so I decided to bring it back and just give it a whole. It's almost like you take a black and white movie and you remaster it for color. That's what we're doing here. And so everything, the word balloons, the effects, the coloring, everything is all new, and with some new covers. And so I'm introduced. So because you either have the graphic novel or you had the individual copies from '06, but not that big of an audience. So when you think about it in the scheme of things, so I left comics for over 10 years. So now, coming back 2 years ago, I've always wanted to finish what I started with, Disney in My Toilet. So now I get to do that with a new audience and a new generation of comic readers, and hopefully, get parents and the kids together at the table, because every issue of Disney in My Toilet has 4 pages of trivia, word puzzles, critical thinking questions, activities that the whole family can enjoy together. And what a great way to introduce the next generation of comic book readers to Disney in My Toilet.
So we're going to talk about that too. I
Yeah.
promise. This is so interesting
I'm on
because
pitch mode.
no, because one of the things that
Yeah.
people don't want to talk about, in my experience, and certain people are now starting to open up a lot more, is the actual business side of
Right.
things. And distribution is extremely complicated
Yeah.
when you have a book, and getting down price points, and also what everybody takes. And the more distributors you have, and the more middleman you got to cut code through, they keep taking, and that piece of the pie gets very small.
Right.
And everybody says, I want distribution. And I'm in the camp where I want to sell direct to my customer, where it's clear to me that I want direct deals, and I buy and sell a lot of comics, and I'm working to getting direct distribution from the company, so that in my eBay store I can sell directly to my customer, and everybody's going to get it cheaper
Right.
because there's fewer middlemen involved, and everybody's making money, and everybody's not making as much money, but everybody's also spending a lot less money. And
Right.
so, what was that like? Because it obviously must have made you feel really good that your book is in distribution, that a lot of people are distributing it all over the US, if not the world, to some degree. And also your name is having recognition, and even coming back into comics 10 years later, still you must have some clout to some degree.
Well, it was a major undertaking because I was also the person calling all of the retailers and
You're the
pitching.
4 a.m. guy.
Yes, I was the guy who, I mean, it was as far as I sent out press kits to the media, to editors, to the radio stations, news channels. I contacted the bookstores. I would call the buyers at Barnes and Nobles and at Borders and at Walmart, and I was on the phone, and then I would send them samples and fill out the forms and all that other stuff. And I would do all those things, and then I found a distributor that did print on demand distribution, and so then I just connected the two. But it was the legwork involved. It was lengthy. It was at least 6 to 9 months of prep work to get to the point where, and then now I could finding a distributor that can handle everything, so I can focus and just get my quarterly statements. But it was a major undertaking, for something I don't want to repeat. This time around is going to be a different process, but yeah, it was a lot of work.
And so, to even talk about that, because obviously I don't, I haven't published a book yet, and if I ever do and produce a comic, I legitimately have a whole different business plan where I'm more of a variant guy. And I don't want to be in a Midtown Comics or in Diamond or another one where I just want to sell directly to my customers. I have an eBay store and I already have almost a direct distribution system in place. And I also figured out that I can make and save myself an extra 20%, and when you're selling a book for $100, 20% is a lot of money. And so I don't know if you want to go back into distribution per se, or if you're saying, hey, I want to be direct to customer, because this is something that I hear and it's a big debate in a lot of my guests.
Well, I think the challenge is, because I sell my books on my website as well. Right. The challenge is, there are more, it depends on the influx. So you need that buffer. You need that middleman that's going to be a handle on those bigger orders that can go to these stores. Because if for me, I'm not looking everything that takes me away from the creative process, slows it down for me, and it takes me out of my mental space that I need to be in when I'm creating. And running a podcast and trying to fulfill orders, is I can do it, 10, 15, 20 orders a week on my website. But when it goes beyond that, I have to put a stop. I say, wait, let's find a different means so I can focus on what I need to do, because I don't want to spend my entire week, packing stuff, shipping stuff, all that other stuff. It's just, I just want to create.
No, I feel that I enjoy the eBay side of business, but also what I figured out is that I want to sell, and it's a little bit different with comics versus when producing a graphic novel or a floppy issue. So you can't keep raising your prices up. With books I collect and I sell, I'm selling 100, 200, $300 book. So I could technically, as I grow, sell less volume, but raise the price up per book.
Right.
So I can do the same. I could sell 6 books instead of 60 for the same price. But with a floppy, and I don't have this problem yet.
Right.
So, I can't wait to have this problem. It's going to be fun. But I get that side of it. And it's also the idea that if you know that a comic store, and I use Midtown because I live in Connecticut and I love Midtown Comics, if they're going to order 1,000 copies of your book, it's a big deal. And it's a really big PO order as well.
Right.
And
Yes.
that also is helpful in a lot of ways because it gets the book out there.
Yeah. And I think the difference, I think my mindset is this: whether or not I have a distribution deal, well, I still have a responsibility to communicate to all of the buyers at all of these locations, to let them know who I am, that I'm distributed, try to build a connection, and get a name to that location. And then those that really support what you do, try to do something special for that business owner to keep that business going, right? And so that's one of those things that requires time, because it requires, emails, phone calls, the ones in your state, go visit. Um, and when you travel to other states for comic cons, stop in those stores that supported you, and go and whatever, and say, you know what, I'm going to be at this comic con, you want me to come in and do a sketch cover or whatever it is for your store, whatever it is. I think you have to find ways to build those relationships, so that way your business can grow and continue to grow long term. I think people look at the short game. I'm looking at long term relationships. And that's the only way for guys like me to succeed in this business.
Yeah, no, I completely get it, and I don't disagree in which that relationships are everything. But you also mentioned something, and we could go and talk about relationships and comics and the business side of all this stuff for hours easily. But you did mention something. I do want to bring it back, where at the back, and I do want to bring it back to the comic because the comic is absolutely fascinating. I did see it on the Kickstarter. You have activities
Yes.
that are definitely fun and kid oriented, that really foster, either entertaining a kid per se, or even bringing it to their parents. And so, what was that like? Because that is also something that used to be in comics to some degree, and now is not in comics anymore. And so, what prompted that idea? Because it definitely facilitates, an all age comic, and also sort of bringing and also maybe making a parent feel more comfortable, because a comic book is not necessarily the easiest thing to sell to a parent right now.
No, and you see it a lot, I joke about it with my buddy George when we're at conventions. The kids will say, "Oh, look," and the parents are just rushing them by because the parents are looking to buy that Funko Pop that they wanted or whatever it is, or Jim Lee's there, they want a signature. They forget that they brought the kid with them, and the kid's interested in stuff. So I think the biggest thing for me, it's um, a great engagement is a critical piece of development. And so with duty, I want a connection between the reader and the character. And what a great way to bring those two together through to just the questions, the word puzzles, trying to figure out, because everything's tied to the book and it's also tied to science, right? So the first issue of There's Nail in My Toilet, there's a glossary of terms because Duty uses an extended vocabulary. So if a young kid read it and it's like, I don't understand that word, mommy, you just turn the pages right there. We've identified what those words will potentially be, right? And there's a word puzzles. So if a parent loves doing word puzzles, that'd be a great way for the parent, or for the kid. There's a maze. Help Duty get to the uranium chip so he can fuel his ship, right? And there's also critical thinking questions, right? So there's questions like, if it takes this many miles to get from Uranus to Earth, and it takes this many uranium chips to fuel up the tank, how many times does he have to refuel? Right? It requires some thinking and that calculator to come out, right? So that now you have them engaged, and then hopefully they want to come on board. They learn more about duty, they learn more about science, they're learning, and their imagination is running wild. And I think
And also, obviously, given the fact that it is an all age book, but I feel like it's more geared to kids. It's the idea that there's an educational side to it as well,
yes,
and even the comic as well. And that's something that I think also sort of convinces parents. It also makes somebody say, "Well, there's an education value." And my kid's not just reading about Batman punching the Joker, for instance.
right,
Not to pick on Batman, and as much as I love a good Batman comic, but it's the idea that it's not just pure entertainment anymore. Even what Duty's doing and his exploration throughout the entire comic, there is educational sides to all this.
right,
And so it definitely is sort of a really cool bridge into it. And then the critical thinking and the maze and the word searches and all that stuff
right.
sort of ties it all together.
And the caveat is, if you want to know if the answers are correct, you have to get the next issue because the answers will be there. So now it brings them along for the ride because they're like, oh, So I always say buy two, one that you can write all over, the other one that you can save and collect, and then the next one, um, you want to know the answers, you get issue number two, you get the answers to that, then you get a whole new group of activities. And then if you want the answers there, you got to get issue number three. So it's just bringing them along for the ride, have fun learning, and then I tied it into a lot of other things because Duty's more of a lifestyle brand for me, and so there's a coloring book, so color Duty your way. Maybe you don't want Duty to be green, maybe you want him to be blue or purple, right? So, and then there's a guidebook to all the characters which tie into the trading card game that I'm developing, right? So now you get an insight into all the characters that are coming. Oh, who's this character, who's that character? So I'm trying to just, it's all encompassing to make it a world. It's a world building experience for the kids and for the parents. And I mean, you muscle bound guys at the gym, you're not too cool for Duty. You will laugh if you read it as well.
Because that's one of the things that I think people don't understand about comics. And I like the idea of world building. I am not a good world builder, in which the story I'm working on takes place pretty much inside a ship. And there's a reason why, because I want it to be more dialogue based.
Right.
Um, and I also like stories and keeping them in small worlds, especially when you're first writing a book,
Right.
because you can run rampant and then you run into bigger problems. But it's the idea that I think a lot of creators don't understand how to build a world and then how to expand it and then build on top of it, build to the side of it, and then build other components to it. Because, and feel free to correct me, but the way you make money in comics isn't necessarily in comics, it's in the IP of the comic.
Yes.
It's in what the IP stands for, whether you do that on a t-shirt, whether you do that in a trading card game, whether you eventually do that into an animation show or a television show or coloring books or optioning out the movie a bunch of times, for instance. And if you build that world and you build enough of that world, hopefully somebody will come knocking.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's the key. And for me, it's my goal with Duty is to really build that multimedia brand. where there's endless play, endless possibilities, and and multi-generational, and because um I just got something on Instagram where there's a collector of comics, and he showed a photo of all the comics that he had that he purchased. He goes, "You're the only independent in this collection, and my son absolutely loves Duty as well." And he had the book in that pile, and it's all Marvel, DC characters, and that was pretty awesome, And so he took a chance. He got it. He read it. He loved it. His son loved it, and he's like, "Oh, when's the next one?" So that's what I'm trying to build. I think it's not your typical comic book. So it's going to cause you to pause for a second. It's like, maybe I'm too cool for this. You're not too cool. Stop acting up. Pick it up, read it. You will laugh. Who doesn't like to laugh? It's infectious. Have fun for a minute. Be a kid. Have that corny laugh with the snort, and just enjoy it. And that's it.
Because this is something that I think, obviously independent comics, and one of the reasons why, when Jeffrey reached out to me, I'm like, oh man, let me actually check out what you're doing. And I was sort of saying yes because I was hemming and hawing. And I'm very honest, whenever somebody reaches out to me at this stage, I have to be saying, do I really want this person on my show?
Right.
And I'm very selective at this stage due to, I just obviously funded on Kickstarter for my show, and certain people book guaranteed guest spots. And I also reach out and get certain guests who are somewhat high profile. And I'm like, oh man, this is a kind of a cool book,
Right.
and kind of a beating off the path where it's not your traditional, nude cover Kickstarter book.
Yes.
And I say
Yes.
this, and look, don't get me
Amen.
wrong. That's perfectly
Amen.
fine. It's not, there's no F bomb being dropped in this book,
No, no,
and there's no like sex or anything like that. And
no.
so I was like, okay, this is a different path. And now we're really diving into the kids genre of comics, which nobody talks about.
No, and I don't understand. It's like taboo. It doesn't make sense. I never grew up. I just have to have an adult shell, right? So inside the inner kid in me is like, yo, what the hell? Why is it every time I go to Kickstarter, they have to have a variant cover that's half naked? There's an audience out there, a generation of kids that are growing up too fast. And let's slow down and let them have fun. I grew up with Saturday morning cartoons. I grew up having fun, and reading comics. My first introduction to comics was Archie comics, and so I'm hoping to be able to continue the legacy of comic book making and introduce a younger market and let the family know, hey, this is safe for all of you. You can sit down at the table. The title, the punchline is in issue 10. It's a 10-mark miniseries. So when they hear the title, like, oh, what is this? No, it's not as scatological as you think. It's not crazy. It's just a punchline. It's comical, and you'll understand why. In issue 10, it's really about Duty's story and his journey growing up and figuring out who his identity and having to try to live up to his father's expectations, which is why he bites off more than he can chew every time around, right? And so who doesn't relate to that? You're trying to win your parents' favor and you're trying to prove to them that you're not a knucklehead, but you keep making mistakes. That's Duty.
And to even go off of what you said, because obviously I've spoken to a lot of people who are quote unquote the old timers, and people who are now in their 60s and going into their 70s in comics. And one of the things that a bunch of them have said is the failure of the big two, DC and Marvels, that they used to have comics in the spinner rack. Comics used to be printed on newsprint. Comics used to be $1. And it used to be that Johnny goes with mommy to the store, and then Johnny's a good boy, and then he sees the dollar comic, and mommy gives it to Johnny and checks out, and then Johnny's reading Batman or Spider-Man on the way home, and is shutting up in the car, and mom's like, thank God.
Yes.
But that used to foster the next generation.
Yes.
And there's something lost. And I understand that prices have increased from $1 per se, but you have to be kidding me that DC and Marvel can't figure out how to get a book down below $1.
They
And
can. They can. If you can package an action figure with a comic book for $9.99, that's an action figure and a comic book, and the casing, and for $9.99, you can definitely just do a comic book for a lot less.
I think that they would be very easy, because I know for a fact that somebody has printed 5,000 books and they've gotten it down below like 70 cents per book. So maybe Marvel and DC, if they printed 30,000 copies of a book, they could easily get it down below that price point. Easily.
It goes back to the agenda, right? So right now the agenda is filmmaking, right? That's where they're making a lot of their money, and the filmmaking is fueling specific titles. So Moon Knight right now is going to probably pop off in sales because of the film, right? So everything for them is transactional. It really and I think what happens is when you have a board and you have board of directors and all that stuff and investors, everything changes, so you lose the essence of what it was. And I think that's why the independent community is so important, because we're creating raw, properties that we've been wanting to see that we don't see. And so the challenge for the independent community is that we also have a bad rep of inconsistency, right? So now you're fighting against that, right? So you're not the big two, but you also don't have a good reputation. So your credibility is kind of shaken up. So you have to work 10 times harder to try to build your audience and try to convince people to invest in you.
Yeah, it's a real problem. And, obviously you're in the space, I'm in the space. I don't need to tell you horror stories. You don't have to tell me horror stories per se, but there's stories of artists not paying, or writers not paying their artists stiffing writers, companies not fulfilling, people having multiple Kickstarter accounts and not delivering. And then there's other things that go on, and people just being difficult, and people, ghosting people, and people harassing people. And I know every story. I know every story, and I know every story from every side.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because people like to talk off
Yes.
air.
Yes.
And I'm also, and I don't know how you are on Kickstarter, but I am very, very selective now, because it's now not just the fact that you need a good book. There's a million good books. This month alone, it's March 1st, everybody, when this is live, and then we see subsequently.
Uh-oh.
So I'm still here. There's going to be about 25 amazing Kickstarters this month, and I'm going to only be able to back one of them. And so I have to look at who the person is, how they fulfilled, what covers they have, what their story is. Have they gotten into any trouble in the last 5 years? Have they actually told a fan to fuck off?
Imagine.
But that's the thing. When you have 25 great projects,
Yes.
you need to make those determinations, and then also have to say, who do I want to interview too? Who do I want to get into their circle? And that's the other thing too that I have to look at this point. And so I don't know how you are on that front.
I think for me, I look at, like, I support like friends, their campaigns, but and then I support campaigns that I think is interesting for me. Um, uh, but as far as like right now, the whole purpose of Cast of Craze is really just to give a platform for the unsung hero, so they can promote their project. I'm not. We're not promoting the person per se. They're promoting themselves, and the audience will make a decision what to do with that information. Now, we've had guests that that were just a little too much, that were not return guests, right? But we give them, we give everybody a fair shot, and we try to keep it to really just focus on what they're doing in their books and their work. And we don't critique what they do. We just give them a microphone and a spotlight. Say, all right, let's talk about your creative process. Your book. What is it? Who's it for? What's the intention? And that's basically what it is. But we don't just talk to comic creators. We talk to just creators. Whether you're a puppeteer or a cosplayer or an actor, we've had musicians. So if you're just a creative in the independent circuit, we talk to you.
No. I feel that. I feel that. In which that on this show, I mean, we talk about your book,
Yeah.
and we are here to talk about your book and promote your book and let people know who the hell you are.
Right.
Because unfortunately, people don't know who you are. And I guarantee you there's half my audience that's going to see this doesn't know who you are.
Right.
And that's the point, is that
Yeah.
you got a Kickstarter going on, or you got a project, or I just happen to like your art. And why wouldn't I want to introduce somebody who I like their art? And whether they have a project or not, it doesn't matter. But that's what we're here to do. At least that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because I knew that. I knew leaving comics for a decade and coming back 2 years ago and coming back to COVID. Well, great timing. Is it's like I'm coming back to comics. Oh, everything's locked down. What the hell? It was. I knew that I'd have to reinvent myself and put in the work. And it just a grind. I think this is number 28. In 2 weeks, the podcast that I'm on, trying to get the word out and build the awareness of really about duty. I'm really promoting duty, and again, I love comedy, I love laughter, and I want to share this story with as many people as possible.
Well, we're going to continue to talk, but I do have ads to play, because I did put on my Kickstarter, and I want to keep this project afloat, and I found a creative way how to do it. So I have a 30-second ad from my friend over at Cowabunga Comics. They got a bunch of cool stuff. And so we'll be back in like 32 seconds, everybody. And so obviously we're back, and I do need to play my sponsors, because that's how this show is getting funded. I make no qualms about it. I have sponsorship spots open, so if you would like to sponsor my show, feel free to hit me up, everybody. But I do want to continue talking about your book, and in particular the rewards, because this is number 28 for you, and you're making the rounds, going crazy, and you got a lot of stuff going on with this. And so obviously you have the digital, and I have pictures. So this is the digital. Then there's the collected work of pretty much everything that you've done, and I think a few other people. And so you can add that on, and that's all digital. And then this is cover A.
Yes.
And then this is cover B.
Yes.
And then this is cover C. And I'm not too sure what movie this is from, but we don't have to tell everybody. And then this is cover D, and that's kind of cool. And there's some other stuff. So and there's some other covers, but I'll let you answer those four.
Basically, this is First Flush, right? So you can't have First Flush without having an homage to Rambo's First Blood, right? So come on, I'm a big Stallone fan. I think he's just the man, and so I just wanted to have fun with that. And then come on, The Matrix, and Duty's the ultimate cosplayer. I challenge any cosplayer out there to try to compete with Duty. He's gonna have you beat. So and you'll find out why in the story on why he has so many different costume changes, and. So then there's a variant cover by Maciej Gempro, the one that he's in this UFO crash landing on Earth. That one, yeah, he's an artist from Poland, and he worked with me on one of my kids' books that's on the digital bundle, The Adventures of Cosmic Gorf. So he did the interiors for that story, and then cover A was illustrated by George Medina. George Medina gave up illustration over 10 years ago. He just writes books, and so to get a Medina. That's crazy. I'm just saying. I just saw somebody sell it on eBay for $40. So, because he's never going to draw again. And then I did an homage to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue number 30. It's the one with Duty sitting on a tree stump. That is a limited edition. Comes
that one, or
the white cover on the tree.
I didn't show it yet.
Yeah,
I got others to show.
He's like, come on. That one has certificate of authenticity, limited to 100 copies, comes with a sign-in number certificate, and that's basically the cover of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue number 30 by I think IDW, I believe it is. And so I thought it was such a brilliant piece, and I said I have to have Duty in this scene because it's a great way for him to log in his journal with his ship burning in the background. And just dear Dad, everything is going swell. But
So to even talk about that, because obviously you're paying a lot of tribute and homage
yeah,
to several different works. Obviously, The Matrix, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 30 that IDW took it over from. And what is that like? Because obviously, some people are going to immediately get those covers.
right,
People collect homage covers just as what they want, and they don't collect anything else, and they don't even read them.
right,
And they're just like, look, I need, it happens all the time with Spider-Man 300. There's been so many of that Todd McFarlane cover that almost every Kickstarter at one point or another does one of those.
right.
And there are people who just collect that. There are people who just collect swimsuit editions. There are people who just collect a particular artist. And so what was that like? Because it is paying tribute to it, but it's also really funny at the same time.
Yes, and
It's got like a
most people.
summer camp vibe to it.
Yes. So most people do homage covers to comic books, covers and properties. And so two of the homage covers are to movies. And it's really for the collector, because you're going to get the standard covered A to read it. But if you want to collect the series, and you're a cover collector, that's what that's for. Because those will be limited runs. You're not going to have, it's to find those covers in a store will be based on store by store um, purchase, because most retailers will just get the standard cover. If they want the other covers, that's going to be limited to that location or whatever it is that they want. So, and it's really just having fun. It's really having fun with it. And I did an homage cover to Action Comics number one for Catch the Crazies, a property that I did, and that was a huge hit because everybody who loves Superman wanted that cover. Um, but for me, it's just about having fun. It's about having fun and putting in and then showing duties on diversity, because I can put them in anything and it's over.
It's kind of funny. And then obviously there's this right here, which is a blank sketch, which obviously, you could pretty much ask for a version and anything on it by you. And I'm pretty sure you're open to saying, hey, I want duty done in Ghostbuster style.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm very flexible with the sketch cover for this as well. It's usually I do a lot. I do really well at Comic Cons with the sketch covers.
And so that's there. And then there's some other stuff that obviously you were mentioning, Duty and Friends.
Yes, that's the
Um,
guidebook.
that's the trading, combo and all that stuff that's out there, and collect, the first set of trading cards with the book. Then there's obviously the coloring is up there as well if you want that. And then, you have a whole, promo thing, probably a hell of a lot better than what I was charging. Um, I'm expensive. I'm just going to say it. I'm
Yeah.
expensive. A live read on my show is not cheap. Guest spot is not cheap. I'm pricey. But I'm worth it. You can't skip Harmony. I am worth it. So I'm just gonna drop that. But obviously, you do offer that as well.
Yes. Yes. Well, on Kickstarter, I always do give breaks. You're gonna see things less on Kickstarter than you would see on my website or at a Comic Con. So that's the difference. So on Kickstarter, I try to be competitive and try to drive. Just I really want people to read the book. So I said, you know what? There are indie creators that don't have a big budget that want to promote their stuff, and you know what? Get the book and get promote. You get the guest spot on the show. You get to promote your commercial, 30-second commercial on the show or whatever it is.
See, I used to be cheap. I used to, and what happens is that, and I'm very honest about this, is that I used to be completely free, but people wouldn't show up.
Mm,
And so now when money gets involved, people show up, and then when people are like, yo, I got a Kickstarter, could you get me in like a week and a half? I'm like, no, because, at this stage in the game, a bunch of people didn't show up, and that's kind of what happened. And unfortunately, I've been doing this for 3 years, the live side. And I also understand that I get certain guests on my show, and I'm going to put somebody right next to you. And that's what happens. And also, I want to be selective
Right.
because not every guest, as you put it a nicer way, I'll put it the way I want to put it. Not every guest gets views. Not every guest shares out an interview. Not
Mhm.
every guest is a good interviewee.
Right.
And that's a problem where all of a sudden it's like I have a sponsor and my first sponsor makes some set the tone for the rest. And that's the other thing too, is it's hard for me to be competitive when another company set the tone.
Right.
And that's what happens. It's kind of like, you have your package and then somebody says, I can only do half of that. It's kind of hard for you to sort of take that position and screw the guy who paid, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it 100%. And I think, one of the things I use a calendar, so it isn't like, oh, you bought this spot and you're automatically going on. It's going to be put in the pipeline. And these are the dates that it'll run, so that way everyone's clear. And I try to keep it structured and organized. So this way there's no chaos. It's like, controlled chaos.
Oh, I have a calendar. I know
Yeah.
exactly where
Yeah.
everything's running, and
Yeah.
my guest knows where everything's running. And I can tell you for a fact that I'm even more expensive than my rates on Kickstarter now, because again, it's only fair that if you bought something off of my Kickstarter, that you get it at the cheapest price point possible,
Right.
or you get something comparable. So I didn't have any stretch goals, but if you have stretch goals, maybe you can't change the price, but maybe somebody at con doesn't get the stretch goals,
Right.
which is what also affects price in a lot of ways. But that's inner business
Right.
per se. But again, you're significantly cheaper than me, significantly. But I'm worth it. I'm worth it. I promise. I'm worth it. So if you don't like the result, I'm just saying I'm open and I got no problem openly stating that. Hey, it's about money, guys. I just want to keep my show alive for another year. That's all I really want to do, and that's why I'm thrilled that I got funded on Kickstarter.
There you
Um, but you also have some other things out there too, where you have a retail bundle, which is always helpful
go. Yeah.
for stores, and I'm a big proponent of that because at some point I'm an eBay store. I do want to have more indie merch in there that fits with what I'm selling. And so I am a customer and I am testing those waters. Also, you have the weekend bundle, which I don't even know what that is. I don't know if the weekend's over.
Yeah, that ended already. So on the weekends I do a special bundle, and I did the Sam special, and 4 people scooped that up. So I try to spice things up on the weekends, because everyone's distracted on the weekends, going out, all this other stuff. So I start promoting it like on Friday, and just to draw some excitement and energy around it.
And then you also have something that's also very interesting, and I think more people should do it, is you have the educational bundle and the
Yes.
education bundle. And
Yes.
that is definitely aimed at schools, libraries, things like that.
Right.
Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know how old you are. I'm 29.
You just froze.
Hold up. Am I back
Yeah,
now?
you're back now. Yeah. Yes.
It does this. I have really bad internet where so obviously I was talking about the educational bundle and geared to libraries and high schools and not high schools, elementary schools. Wow. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. But one of the things that when I was starting to, because I'm 29, and in my senior year of high school, graphic novels started getting introduced into where I went to school. And I went to school in New York, but it was sort of becoming more common. And what is that like for you? And correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously I'd imagine more cons are coming into schools at this point. And
Yeah,
so,
I think the challenge is the timing, because everyone's hypersensitive about everything that's being introduced into schools. So there's a longer scrutiny process. Everything's being scrutinized, because everyone's afraid of what somebody else might say. So for there's an alien on my toilet to get into the school requires me to go and meet with people, and have them read it and explain it, because they're not willing to take the chance on the campaign. I've had some conversations. They want to see it. They They want to hear, about it. They want to have it physically in the hand to be able to determine. It has to go through a committee. There's got to be signature sign-offs. Where years ago it was easier. I can go in as a guest speaker. They would purchase a certain amount for the classroom. Everything was easy. Now it's a little difficult because of the temperature of the state of the country right now.
And also, I would imagine certain states are just more acceptable than others, and
Yeah.
it might not be what people think. Which states are more friendly? Because there's a lot of heated discussions in places like California about this, and a variety of other places, and it might be more acceptable in Connecticut.
Yeah. Yes. The New York is easier. Was easier for me. I'm in Texas now, so it's a little challenging here where I have to network out here and I have to go and meet some people and schedule the time to do that. And but I had a teacher who asked me because I just had the physical bundle. It was 25 copies for a classroom, and so then someone asked, is there a digital version? So I did a digital bundle. So the teacher gets the physical copy plus a poster that says "I love learning," and then a license for an entire classroom. And but then now it requires again the steps. So
Did you
that's why I'm not seeing the return on those right now because of the fact that the time has changed.
did you also think that it might be something that obviously is in play outside the Kickstarter in a lot of ways because it does
Yes.
require more times?
Yes, it requires me to go and do presentations and meet and all that stuff. Yeah.
And then that also opens up a different entire realm as well, where obviously one of the biggest, and you probably know it more than I do, is Scholastic is one of the biggest, book fair players in the game.
Yeah.
And obviously that is probably a path that might not be the easiest path, but that's also probably on the table to some degree in graphic novel format, or even the idea of you even just being a guest speaker at a school or even at a library or something like that as well, because libraries are a different ballgame as well. Even if they only order one or two copies of the book, it's
Yeah.
still.
Yes, libraries, and again, and that's one of the things because I've only been here for a few months. I just moved. I lived on the East Coast my whole life, and so one of the things that's on my list to do is to go to these locations, meet with the faculty, meet with people, get guest speaking spots, and I used to do it when I was in comics in New York. It For every classroom I spoke to, the school would purchase the number of comics for that class, and that was my fee. He's like, buy enough books for the whole classroom, and I'll come in and I'll talk to the class for 30 minutes or whatever, an hour. And so that's what I'm working on doing out here.
Yeah, because it's just people by people,
Yeah.
and that's what it is. And I understand networking, and I don't network at cons anymore because I can do all my networking online, and it's way more efficient. And there's a million places you can network, and I have like 20 ideas for you off the top of my head. But I'll tell you them outside of the interview because it'll be boring for everybody else. I don't want to give all away my secrets
There you go.
because I can charge for that stuff. So.
He's got a calculator. I saw it.
Hey, what can I say? Again, I just want to keep my show afloat.
There you go.
That's where I'm at as a person. Is
Absolutely.
that because I make money through other means beyond my podcast, and I do have sponsorships, and the Kickstarter helped, and cash flow positive, and all the money's going right back into the show. Everybody, that's all I'm going to say. So obviously, you got a lot of stuff going on. I recommend everybody go buy this book right here. I am poor, so I am going to have to try to see if I can find 20 bucks because it is an awesome book in a lot of ways. But this is the one you should buy because it is super limited. If you're a Turtles fan, that's the book you buy.
Absolutely.
Kevin Eastman was on my other show, so I love Kevin in a lot of ways, and he's great in that function. So yeah, that's something that is very cool. And then obviously though, I do want to back out of rewards, and I do want to talk a little bit about Kickstarter because Kickstarter has become a very interesting platform, and my opinion on Kickstarter has changed. Where I didn't realize that crowdfunding is complicated. A lot more. It's a lot more complicated than people
Yes,
think,
it is.
and also for me, I was crowdfunding a podcast. I was not crowdfunding a comic, which is also a different ballgame completely. Um, and obviously, I have issues with Kickstarter as a funnel and as a system. Where if I'm to do this again, I would rather build it on ClickFunnels, and I'd rather go and build my own funnel because I want to build a downstream funnel,
Right.
not a funnel with 15 exits.
Right.
And that is the biggest flaw with Kickstarter. But I am curious where you think Kickstarter is going because it has significantly changed from just saying, I have an idea and I got 10% of the project done, but I need $300 to get the other 90% done. And if I get this done, everybody's getting a piece of this project and getting a reward to now becoming a pre-order form, which is what it was for me, being I got half the book done, I need the money for the other half, or people actually running a business and then living off of their Kickstarter money that they made because they raised 30,000 and they took in 18,000 after they paid everybody. So where do you see all that going? Because it is complicated.
It's very complicated. It's an investment of time. When you think about the time that you put in to design the page, the time that you put in to promote the campaign on a day-to-day basis for the life of the campaign, that, and if you attribute those man hours to if it was a job, you're not making money, you're making pennies, unless you're a Brian Polito or somebody who has a big draw, who's established a foundation where they have a fan base. For the little guy, it's a major undertaking, and there's no perfect science behind it. I think the biggest thing is consistency, clarity of message, and just a lot of commitment to it. This is my seventh campaign, I believe. Yeah, my seventh campaign. I've been fortunate enough that every campaign on Kickstarter has been funded. But it pales in,
Brutal.
yeah, it pales in comparison to the big boys. So, we this is probably the most backers I've had so far yet. So usually, I think 52 was the most. So now I think we're on 67 now. And there's about 117 still signed up watching the campaign. So who knows when they'll pull the trigger? But this is the most. That what shows me that those 7 campaigns, I've learned something each time, and I've gotten better and better and better with my communication. But it's not easy.
Oh, it is not. And people who have watched my show understand exactly what happened to me. And I'm not going to go rehash it, but it was a very, very wake up call in the comic community to me. And the comic community is not a saint, to put it nicely.
Right.
And I'll tell you off air because I don't need to rehash it for everybody what exactly happened to me. But there's a list, and a bunch of people made the list. That's all I can say without getting into too much trouble.
Right.
And if you don't know what the reference is, go back to 2000, and you can go figure it out from there. You got what I'm referring to, right?
I'm thinking about people who backed out last minute.
I'm not even talking about people who backed out. I'm thinking about
Okay.
if a back out is your worst assumption out of that, then you're going to be in for a rude awakening. But I digress right there. I actually do though want to ask you about conventions as well because obviously cons are now starting to come back.
Yeah.
And I'm curious where you see them going. And I'm going to even narrow it down slightly and give my position is that I've come into digitalization pivot 2.0, where I want to sell online. I want to be bigger online. I want to be more active online. And while a con is fun and everything, I do not think that's where the money is.
Right.
And I don't think the money is ever going to be back at cons the same way. Because if I can sell my book 24/7 or an ad on my podcast 24/7, why do I want to be sitting at a con table on my weekend for 3 days in a row for 16 hours when I could sit playing video games and running a Facebook ad to sell my book? And so I'm curious how you feel about all of that and where they're going.
See, I love cons, but you have to be strategic on where you go because not every con is right for you. and not every con is going to be representative of your target market. And so I think you need to do your homework now. You have to, because, you know, 10 years ago when we were doing cons, we would just want to do every con. We were doing 18 shows a year, and you know, and some of them were winners and some of them were duds, and you know, and we took our lumps. You know, I'm not in a position to take lumps. You know, my whole spiel is, you know, what's the cost of doing business, and can I get a profit out of this? Can I come home in the black and not in the
I'm
red?
going to throw a term out there, ROI,
Yeah, yeah.
and it goes down to that.
Absolutely. And so I think you have to do the math. You got to know your audience. You know, and so for me, this year I plan on doing about 4 shows, but very specific shows. And because shows that I know that there's a greater percentage chance of me either breaking even or making a profit. I don't want to walk away with a loss. And, you know, because, you know, I'm not in a position to do that. And so I think you just got to be very strategic and mindful, and build that audience. And hopefully you have a fan base in that location. Like I'm planning on building an audience out here in Texas now that I'm here. And so talking to the comic shops, talking to the convention promoters, because there's a lot of conventions out in Texas, and talking to convention promoters, doing my research, going there as a spectator first to see what the audience looks like, the crowd looks like. Is it a convention that's just fully cosplayers and there's not going to be anybody spending any money because they want to go to step and repeat and get photo ops? That's not my show.
It's also understanding the medium income
Yeah,
of the con, of the surrounding area,
yeah,
and that's all part of research. And it's a position that people don't talk about. Where if you know you're in an area of the country where the medium income is 120,000, dollars per year, people might have X amount of money, and the cost of living is 70,000. People might have extra money laying around.
right,
First
right,
thing, if the medium income is 90,000 and the cost is 80,000, you have to really ask yourself, is there even going to be money for people to buy this stuff that they don't know?
right, right. I took a chance. Everybody else was doing a comic show, and I went to a collector show, and I took a chance. It was a gamble, and never been there. And it was a toy collector show, and I went there. I made back everything, the hotel, the table, the printing, everything. And I just rolled the dice and I said, let me go. I've never been to a toy collector show, you know, and it was a hit. And I was like, oh, wow. So it brought a different perspective. Sometimes you have to think outside of the box. You know, it's like, you know, you'll find an audience in the places that you won't even think existed, because they didn't expect to see you there either, right? It's like, oh wait, hold on, you know what? Let me check this out while I'm here buying my GI Joe with the Kung Fu grip. Let me go check what this guy has to offer. It could be at a book fair, like the Miami Book Fair that's every year. It could be, you know, an outdoor street fair. You don't know. You gotta test the waters and see what's happening. It could be art festivals that are happening in your town. You know, so I think creatives, you have to be creative and think differently if you want to really grow, because sometimes when you go to those big shows, they're there for the big names. They're there for the autographs and the photographs and all that other stuff and the bragging rights. And there's a specific budget that they
I
carry
mean,
with it.
I could tell you, and I'm teaching a class on it eventually, hopefully sometime this year. And I got maybe like 14% of the class done in PowerPoint so far. But one of the things is that I have a comic budget. I don't bring a credit card to a convention. I
Mhm.
have X amount of cash, and every dollar before the con begins has an assigned mission.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to do. And I mock and I laugh at people in the ATM line. And the reason why, no, 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 it's not to be mean.
Right.
It's not it, but I look at it and I say, I did a whole investing panel on a Friday night at a con. I said, tomorrow, the longest line at the con is going to be the ATM line.
Yeah.
And I said we should all come together and laugh at them, because that means that you didn't plan. You saw all the fun toys. You're paying fees on it to take out your money, and now you're taking out money from whatever you had because you didn't plan on bringing enough of it,
Right.
and you didn't have an assigned position with your money. I
Yeah.
have $1,000 at most cons. Every dollar has an assignment, and maybe there's $40 for miscellaneous.
Right.
But if I go to a smaller con, that budget changes because I'm like, fuck it, I got $100,
Mhm.
and there is no assignment to that $100. Now I might say, look, I'm not going to go buy a Marvel book because I'm a DC guy, for instance. But beyond that, if there's no good DC books I want, and there's literally 7 indie books I want, I don't even think about it. So that's kind of, I think, what plays to that a little bit.
Right, and that's what I said. It's like you got to think about, like, say a show has 10,000 people. You got to say, uh, 50% is already taken from the mainstream. You're gonna have another 20% cosplay, another 20% that's toys and collectibles, right? And then you're gonna have so you're fighting, and that size goes down. You're gonna probably get 3 to 4 to 5% of that population that's interested in independence, but there's specific independence that they're looking for, right? So now you have to be charming, witty, engaging, and be the true salesman to try to get their attention, because you're fighting for scraps, right? And you're trying to sell your stuff. The worst thing you could do for yourself is have your head down at the table and not focus on that crowd that's walking by. You have to try to make eye contact, try to have your pitch nailed, so that way you can, you're there for a purpose, and make sure you focus on that.
It's a whole different game, and there's a good chance I will never be at a con when I sell my book, because I have my audience already, and I have them on eBay, and my eBay store is growing, and I know who I'm catering to.
Right.
There's going to be variants that I produce specifically based on certain artists, and I'm going to be the only game in town, and it's a whole strategy, and it's called the Blue Ocean strategy,
Right.
where I'm eliminating my competition because I'm getting artist A, who everybody wants their work, and there you go, and then you do limited print quantities,
Right.
and you don't release them all at once, and that's how you make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you charge whatever you want if you're the distributor, because everybody needs, your stuff. It's the Big Shorts. There's a scene in that movie where everybody wants our swaps. Everybody wants our swaps,
Yeah.
and that's the hottest thing on Wall Street. Everybody wants our swaps. But I digress because I don't want to keep quoting that movie, because I do not want to get a copyright strike. That's tomorrow's interview. Tomorrow I'm going to get whacked is what's going to happen. I'm having my friend Brett Juliano on, and he writes about mobsters.
Yes.
So if we speak ill about them, I'm going to get whacked.
Yes. That's the Buddy Mafia, Smet.
Yeah, he does Money Mafia.
Yeah. We had him on the show last year. Yes.
He's great. He's great.
Yeah.
But if we speak ill about the mob,
yes,
him or me are going to get whacked. Hey, or you notice we will get a lovely gift. It's called a field trip to a river, and cement shoes all size fits one.
Yeah, or a package with a fish in it.
Exactly. So before I get you and me canceled, and hey, I mean, if you want to get whacked with us, you're more than happy to join. I'm just saying, I'm sure they'll be happy to drive you to the tri-state area, because you're in Texas. Brett's, I think, around Chicago, so they'll go pick you up, get Brett, and then come to Connecticut, and then they'll drive us all to the Hudson River at like 3 a.m. And don't worry, the cement will be on them.
Yeah, no, well, I'm going to give them his fedoras, because he has more fedoras than a retail store.
I'm just saying, it's more than happy the mob. If you want to join us, you just have to say the word. But anyhow, I digress right there. Clearly, this show is going downhill. Clearly, it already started. So, having said that, though, I do want to give you a chance to self-promote yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, there's Nailing in My Toilet. It's fun for everybody. It's fun for the whole family. It's safe. It's if you loved Alf, you love Marvin the Martian, you love Invader Zim, you're gonna love Duty. He is lovable. Then you'll fall in love with Herman the Chihuahua. I mean, because he does steal the show. Take a chance with it. It ends next Tuesday. There's only 7 days left of the campaign, and every one of my campaigns I deliver on time, so you have nothing to worry about, because this book is done. And so expected delivery is April. And as long as the printers own up to their end of the bargain, and they deliver to me on time, within 48 hours, it turns around and heads to you. And for more, go to icreatestories.com, which is my website, and you'll learn all about all the things I've done. And check out Catch the Craze on YouTube. And my hashtag for all social media platforms is Catch the Craze, with a DA, not a THE.
Well, I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to say it again. I've been saying it for almost 27 months now. Is you have to support indie comics. And what that means is you have to back indie comics on Kickstarter. You got to share them out, whether you're pledging $1, $5, or $100. Every little bit helps. And you need to support people. Obviously, you got a project going on right now, and you need to go support that if you like what you heard. And it's very, very important to go do that. And then it's also the idea that, even if you are in a position where, money's tight, I get it. Everybody knows that. It's the idea that you should still share it out, as I stated, because sharing it out on Twitter, on YouTube, Instagram, it goes a long way too, because you never know who you're speaking to. And that
Yes.
is very, very helpful as well. And as far as I'm concerned about me, because I am a shill for myself right now, you definitely use Mixum if you need to print your books. 5% off Andrew Davis, code Andrew Davis. I also have a affiliate link with BCW Supplies, 10% off. Type in Pop Anime Comics at checkout. Bags, boards, long boxes, all that jam. As well as I do have a shirt on Redbubble. It's in the description up above. It's a really cool Gundam shirt. I do need the sales from that, so please go buy that. I do like money, and I like to keep this show afloat. So please go do that and go check out Cowabunga Comics. They have some really cool variants. And Kyle is a really cool guy. He's down in Florida, but they could ship anywhere you want in the world. And yeah, that's pretty much me. Also, subscribe, YouTube, Facebook page, Twitter, at Pop Anime Comics, all that stuff. Type in Pop Anime Comics and my name will pop up. And that's all I got. So I'm going to give you the final word.
Have fun, laugh, create, and inspire. That's it.
I don't think I could have said that any better myself, everybody. That is a wrap.